All right, guys, let's put those away. Put those away. So what we're talking about today and what we're starting today is chapter 3. We're going over quadratics. And the main form of quadratics that we're going to be looking at is ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, we talked about quadratics in the last chapter. That's mainly what we talked about, but we didn't talk so much about solving them or finding ways to solve quadratic equations, finding the values of x that will make the function be 0. Now, one of the main ways that we can solve quadratics is by factoring. So we're going to take the quadratic and rewrite it as 2 sets of parentheses. We want to factor it down because this is one of the main ways to solve. Now, the way that I do factoring, I do it in several main steps. The first, greatest common factor. We need to see if there is a greatest common factor between the 3 terms, or between the 2 terms that we're given for the quadratic. And if there is, we're going to factor it out. Also, if a is negative, if the value in front of the x squared term is negative, we're going to factor that negative out. If a is negative, we're going to factor out that negative. Once we do that, our second step is to write 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. You good?
I did 5. I squared 5. It's 5.
Nice. So step 2 is we're going to write 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Our third step is to find the sign. If the third term is positive, then the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So if the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. Step number 4. We want to find the factors of the first and third term. And lastly, we want to plug in and check. We want to plug in and check and see if we have the correct set of factors or if we factored it correctly. All right, let's look at this first example problem here. 5x squared plus 15x plus 10. First main step, is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? Between 5x squared, 15x, and 10. Well, there is. It is 5. And 5 is the only one because there is no variable in all three. So 5 is the greatest common factor. And we're going to divide it out of all three. We're going to factor it out of all three. Because if I divide 5 out of 5x squared, we're left with x squared. Plus, if we factor 5 out of 15x, 15 divided by 5 is 3. And we still have the x. And if we factor 5 out of 10, we're left with positive 2. So the first thing we want to do is find the greatest common factor if there is one, and factor it out. Questions on step number 1? Our second step is to write two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. The main reason we have the 3 spaces is to make sure we have enough room for all of our terms. Now our third step is to find the sign. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. Well, the sign of our third term is positive, so the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. So we're going to have plus and plus. So that takes us through step 3. Step number 4 is to find the factors of the first and third terms. Our first term is x squared. Our third term is 2. Now our factors of x squared, we do have 1 and x squared or x and x. 1 and x squared does not help us with factoring. Our main set of factors for x squared are going to be x and x. Now the only factors of 2 are 1 and 2. Now once we find the factors of the first and third term, we're going to plug one of the sets of factors for each one in and check it. Well, the only factors for x squared that we have are x and x. So I'm going to put them in the first spot. First factors of the first term go in the first spots. Factors of the third term go in the third spots. So the factors of the third term are 1 and 2. And at this point here, it really doesn't matter which set of factors we choose for the first term or third term, because we just need to plug it in and we're going to check it and make sure it is the correct set of factors. Because if these two sets of parentheses multiplied back together to give us x squared plus 3x plus 2, then they are the correct factors. And in most books, it'll tell us the first thing we need to do is multiply x and x. Well, x times x is x squared, yes? Well, where do we get the x and x from? They're the factors of x squared. So why do we need to check that? Because we got x and x from the factors of x squared. Factors multiply together to be that number. So as long as we got the correct factors, there's no reason to check x and x. The other one that we can do is 1 times 2. And 1 times 2 is 2. But we got the 1 and 2 from the factors of 2. So it makes sense that they should multiply together. Have a good one. That they should multiply back together to give us 2, yes? Because they're the factors of 2. There's not a whole lot of reason to check these. The one that ends up changing, or that really we need to be checking for, is the middle term. And we get that from these here, our first and last and our inner 2. X times 2 is positive 2x. 1 times x is positive 1x. And 2x plus x is 3x. Is that the middle term we wanted? Yes. So 5 times x plus 1 times x plus 2 are the factors of this here. This is it in factored form. Questions on this here? Are you ready for the next one? 4x squared plus 32x plus 60. First thing we need to see is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? And a is not negative. The first term, the number in front of x squared, is not negative, so we don't have to worry about a negative. But is there a number or variable that will go into 4x squared, 32x, and 60? There is, and it is 4. So we can divide 4 out of all three terms. 4 divided out of 4x squared is going to be x squared. Now, when we factor 4 out of 32x, we'll still have the x. But really what we're doing is taking 32 and dividing it by 4, which gives us 8. So we'd have 8x. And lastly, 60 divided by 4 is 15. So we're moving 4 from all three terms. We're factoring out, we're moving it to the front. Which gives us 4 times x squared plus 8x plus 15. Since that took care of step 1, we can move on to step 2. Our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So here the third term sign is positive. So the signs are going to be the same and match the sign of that middle term, which is also positive. So that plus and plus. Factors of the first and third term. So our first term is x squared. Our third term is 15. Well, the only factors that we have for x squared are x and x. Really, whatever that variable is that's being squared, be it in the first term or the third term, it's just going to be 1 and 1. So if it's x squared, it's x and x. If it's t squared, it would be t and t. And for the most part, we can just throw those in. If it's in the first spot, factors of the first, we can throw them in the first spot of each set of parentheses. If for some reason it was in the third spot, we would throw it in the third spot. Now 15. We have 1 and 15. 4, 3, and 5. And those are the only 2 sets of factors. Now at this point here, we need to pick between the two, because the first one, we only had 1 set of factors. So we just threw them in. Here, we have 1 and 15 or 3 and 5. Which one do we want to try first? 3 and 5. So we just need to pick one because we are going to check it to make sure we got the right one. Because if we got the right one, we're done. These are the factors. If not, we can switch it around and try to pick one of the other factors. because that could be just switching to 3 and 5 or switching to 1 and 15. Now, again, we're not going to do x times x, because x times x is still x squared, yes? That's how we got the factors of x and x, yes? Positive 3 times positive 5, is that still positive 15? Yeah, no reason to check that. X times 5 is 5x, positive 5x. 3 times x is positive 3x, giving us positive 8x. Is that the middle term we wanted? Yeah. If it wasn't, we could have tried switching to 3 and 5 and see if that got it. It's not going to change anything because the numbers in front of x and x are still 1. So then we could have switched to 1 and 15 and tried it. But we have the correct set of factors, so we can move on. Looking at this here, 4x squared, 13x, and 3, is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? What are the factors of 3? 1 and 3, yes? Is 1 and 3, 1 or 3, well, 1 doesn't really matter. Is 3 a factor of 4? No. So there is no set of factors, greatest common factors, for these three terms here. And the number in front of x squared is positive, so we don't have to worry about negatives. So we can just go on to step 2, our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. Here, the third term is positive, so the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term, which is also positive, yes? 4x squared, well, what did we say about the x squared? Its only factors are what? X and x, yes? Since I know it's the factors of the first term, the first spot in each of those we can go on and put x and x. Now the factors of 4, we do have a few, because we have 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. Now the reason I say go on and put those factors of x squared in, because we know it has to be x and x. If we had looked at the factor of, say, 4x squared, really all we would have changed is that it's 1x and 4x or 2x and 2x. No matter which one we put, x is going to be in both of them. So instead of rewriting all the x's out there, I really just want to look at the factors of 4, because it's really the only thing that's going to be different, either 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. Why put the x's there? They're both going to be there. They're both going to be as part of that first spot. Does that make sense? If we don't have to write it, there's no reason to write it. It's just we're writing x's in both spots. Factors of 3. 1 and 3, yes? Are there any others? No. Now at this point here, we need to pick. Factors of 4, 1 and 4 or 2 and 2? 2 and 2. And then we can just pick 1 and 3. Again, 2x times 2x is still 4x squared. 1 times 3 is still 3. So the main thing we're focused on is the middle term. Because 2x times 3, 2 times 3 would be 6. We still have the x. 1 times 2x is positive 2x. So we have positive 6x plus 2x is 8x. Is that the middle term we wanted? No. We could switch to 1 and 3, but would that change anything? No. Yep. Where do you want to put the 4? Where do you want to put the 1? 4 in the first. Do you want to put the 4 here or here? Here? In the back? All right. Because at this point here, again, it really doesn't matter. We just need to stick it in there and check it. Because that's the nice thing about this. And when we check this here, x times 3 would be positive 3x. 1 times 4x is plus 4x, giving us 7x. Is that the middle term we wanted? No. Do we want to switch the 1 and 4 or 3 and 3? Or 3 and 1? We just have to pick one of them. I just switch those two. X times 1 is 1x. 3 times 4x is positive 12x, giving us, that's what we wanted. Because we just had to pick one and switch it to see if we could get there. Now, if we had switched the 4x and x instead of the 1 and 3, we would have got the same thing. Because 4x plus 1 times x plus 3 is the same as x plus 3 times 4x plus 1. Questions on this here? Now, if you're starting to notice, a lot of this is guess and check. We're plugging stuff in, checking to see if it was the correct middle term. If it is, awesome, we move on. If it's not, we switch it. Are you ready for the next one? Okay. Yeah, because neither one worked. Because as you notice with those there, like the first term and third term were still the same. They're still what we wanted, but the middle term kept changing how we had it set up. Yes? So that's why I say we check the middle term, because the first and third term are always going to be the same. 3x squared minus 7x plus 2. There is no greatest common factor. 3 and 2 don't have any common factors. Doesn't matter about 7. 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. The third term is positive. So the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term, which is negative. So negative and negative. Now we need to find the factors of the first and third term. 3x squared, well, I know it has to be x and x, yes? What are the factors of 3? 1 and 3. Are there any others? No, there's only one set, so we have to put a 3 in front of one of the x's, yes? Which one do you want to put in front of, the first one or the second one? First one. There's only one set of factors, only one way to do it, so let's just throw it in, yes? Factors of 2 are 1 and 2. I can list it out, but there's only one set, so I have to use them, yes? So where do you want to put the 1? Where do you want to put the 2? 1 or 2? 1, 2. And again, we can check. 3x times x is still 3x squared, yes? Negative 1 times negative 2 is still positive 2. Still checks out. Here, 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x, yes? Negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 6x minus x, negative 6 minus 1 is indeed negative 7. Is that the middle term we wanted? Because if you notice this here, our middle terms kind of keep the signs. Since they're both negative, we combine and we get a negative number, yes? That negative times a negative gives us a positive. So that's why this works. That's why the sign stuff works. If the third term's positive, the signs have to be both negative, because a negative and negative multiply together to give us positive. When we combine the middle term, it's still negative. If the third term is positive and the middle term's positive, a positive plus a positive for the middle term is going to be, and a positive times a positive is still a, it tells us what it is. We don't have to look at all the factors of 2, negative 1, negative 2, 2, and 1. We can get the sign. Let's look at this one. Greatest common factor between 2x squared, 7x, and 6. Kind of already told it. There isn't one. 2 and 6, there's greatest common factor of 2, yes? But the big thing is 7 divisible by 2. No, so there is no greatest common factor. Third term is positive, so the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. Factors of the first and third term. 2x squared and 6. Well, 2x squared, I know we're going to have x and x for x squared, yes? Factors of 2 are 1 and 2. Where do you want to put the 2? Yeah, does it matter which one I put the 2? No, we just got to pick a spot and plug it in, yes? Factors of 6 are 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Which one do we want to try first? Pick one. 2 and 3. I'm going to put the 2 first. It's not going to work, but I'm going to put the 2 first. Because if we check this here, 2x times 3 is 6x. 2 times x is plus 2x, and 6x plus 2x is 8x. That's not the middle term we want. Okay? Now, there's a reason I said it doesn't work. Because when we started, we had no greatest common factor, yes? If we look at how this is set up, 2x plus 2, here there's a greatest common factor of 2, which means, just like the beginning, I could factor that 2 out. Because if there's a greatest common factor in either set of parentheses, we can pull it out of that parentheses. We can factor it out. Well, if there wasn't one to begin with, there shouldn't be one in either set of parentheses. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that tells me, so if we notice that, well, I don't even have to check this. 2x plus 2 has a greatest common factor of 2. I can look back at the original problem, 2x squared plus 7x plus 6. There's no greatest common factor of 2. So 2x and 2 cannot be in the same parenthesis because there is a greatest common factor of 2, yes? Now this is helpful because, well, what about this? Does this setup work? No, 2x and 6 have a greatest common factor of 2, yes? I don't even have to check this. I know this doesn't work. Because if we did, we'd get 2x plus 6x, which is 8x. Doesn't work. So there's 4 possible arrangements, especially with the 1 and 6, 2 and 3. We took 2 of those out. That's 2 less that I have to check. It makes this nicer. Now, before we go to 1 and 6, let's switch to 2 and 3. 2x times 2 is 4x. 3 times x is plus 3x. 4x plus 3x is 7x. Is that the middle term we wanted? Now, the more of these that you do and the more that you practice these, the more patterns you'll start seeing. And the more you'll start seeing how the numbers work together, and it's going to make it easier. It's one of those few things, especially in mathematics, the more that you do, the better you get at it. So, and I can attest from my own experience. I've done these for quite a while, even in high school. So, let's look at this one here. 4x squared minus 7x plus 3. There is no greatest common factor, so we will have 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Our third term is positive. So the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term, so it'd be negative and negative. Factors of the first term. We have 4x squared, yes? So I know we'll need x and x. Factors of 4 are 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. Which one do we want to try first? 1 and 4. I'll just put 4 here, 1 in the second one, doesn't really matter. Factors of 3 are, well, 1 and 3. We can list it out or we can just throw it in. What do you want to go with the 4x, 1 or 3? So we can do 1 and 3. check it here because 4x times negative 3 is negative 12x. And negative 1 times x would be negative x, giving us negative 13x, yes? So So 1, we're not even worried about. 1 doesn't do much. Because if I factor 1 out of 4x and 3, I get 4 and 3. It doesn't actually change anything. Anything different than 1, yes. Does that make sense? Yeah. 4x times negative 1 is negative 4x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 4x minus 3x is negative 7x. If you do struggle with negatives in this thing here, now again, all the way up to this point, we've told you again and again, you cannot plug negative 4x minus 3x in a calculator. It won't do it. It has to have a value for x. And yes, that's true. But when we combine like terms, we're really talking about the coefficients, the numbers in front of the variable, yes? Can I do negative 4 minus 3? Yeah, we can just do the coefficients.
May I have your attention, please? The city just called, and they're going to be turning the water off, and it's going to be off for a couple of hours.
Awesome.
So just letting everyone know. Thank you.
I believe these are the last two. 2x squared minus 5x minus 7. Is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? No. Since the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. No, the third term is what? Third term is negative. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. I normally just put the first one plus, second one minus. It really doesn't matter. One of them is going to be plus, the other is going to be minus. Throw them in. Factors of the first and third term. Well, 2x squared, we would have x and x. Factors of 2, well, we just have 1 and 2, yes? Doesn't really matter. I'm going to put the 2 in the first, 1 in the second. Factors of 7 are 1 and 7. Now, if we hadn't done the signs, we'd have to look at the factors of negative 7, which would have been negative 1 and 7, or 7 and negative 1. But we already took care of the signs. We don't have to worry about that. We're just looking at the factors of 7. There's only one set, 1 and 7. That's factors of 7. You want to put the 7 with the 2? Is that what you were saying? So let's check this here. 2x times x is still 2x squared. 7 times negative 1, lo and behold, is negative 7. 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. 7 times x is plus 7x. So we have negative 2x plus 7x, negative 2 plus 7. 7 minus 2 is positive 5x, yes? Is that the middle term we wanted? No. Is it the correct number? That's just the wrong sign. If the number is right, but the sign is wrong, we just need to flip the signs. Now, luckily for this problem here, we could have flipped our other terms, but to do that, I would have to switch the 2x and x and the 7 and 1. I don't want to switch 4 things. I want to switch 2, and we're really just erasing the plus and turning it to a minus, and turning the minus to a plus is just adding a line. It's easier to flip the signs than it is to change everything else. But that's it. Questions on this here? 3x squared minus 7x minus 6. No greatest common factor, so we do have 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Since the third term is negative, our signs are opposite. So the factors of the first term, factors of 3x squared, well, the x squared would be x and x. Only factors of 3 are 3 and 1. Factors of 6 are 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Which one do we want to try first? 2 and 3. The number with the 3x has to be 2, because we can't have 3x and 3 together. That's the greatest common factor. And we can check this here. 3x times negative 3 is negative 9x. 2 times x is positive 2x. And negative 9x plus 2x, negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. Is that the middle term we wanted? And that's it. Literally, that's it. 3 through 10.